Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Lori Berman. I'm Vice President of Membership and Development for the Small Business Association of Michigan. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Leading for Wellbeing, Navigating Mental Health in Your Business. We're really pleased to hear about this important subject today. We have with us a special guest, Dr. Dan Zummerly, who is going to be speaking with you, sharing his expertise. Before we get to Dan, let's do a couple things, a little bit of housekeeping. This is being recorded live on Zoom. We will be sending each of you a copy of the slides and a link to the recording so you can view this afterwards or share it with others. If you have questions, I ask that you use the Q&A feature in Zoom, and we will get back to you with those questions live on air. Also with me today is SBAM's Sarah Miller. Sarah is our Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications. Sarah is watching today's feed and is watching for those questions and answers. So if you have questions, she'll be helping to get those answers out there. Without further ado, Dan, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists today. Dr. Dan Zummerly, he's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's co-owner of Alliance Counseling Group. Dan, tell us a little bit about Alliance Counseling Group and being a co-owner there.
Yeah, thanks, Lori, for the introduction, and to Sarah for hosting, both of you. Yeah, Alliance Counseling Group, we are an outpatient mental health private practice with offices in West Michigan. We have 4 locations throughout the Grand Rapids and Holland area, but we also have a growing telehealth team that services clients throughout the state of Michigan, as well as, and not just counseling, but we also have a prescribing practice too, with 3 providers doing telehealth services for mental health prescribing. I think collectively there are about 50 providers on the team, and we've been in business since 2014, and so coming on our 10th year this year.
Excellent. Well, sounds like a great business. We're excited to learn more about it, your practice and what you do. I'm going to let you take it from here, Dan. You'll be sharing your expertise with us. Thank you again. We'll let you take it away.
All right, well, thank you. Thanks for everyone who's on the call today or who will be watching later on demand. Your interest in this subject it is important. I love that there are people out there running businesses, providing services, who care enough about the intersection of mental health and business to try to learn a few things about how those things relate and interact with each other. I hope today you can get something out of this brief webinar that you can use, or at least kind of be on your mind as you think about the importance of mental health. And as you'll see in the presentation as we get into it, that mental health in your own lives, I want to make the case that that's where it all starts for leaders in mental health, for leaders in business. We can't have an organization that has high well-being if we don't kind of first have that in ourselves. It looks like it's really hard. So thank you for caring enough about this and for giving time to try to learn something about it. Please ask questions as we go. I appreciate the dialogue and back and forth. So if there's something that comes up, don't hesitate to ask the question, and I'll do my best to make sure we can get it answered. Just kind of said all that stuff. So thank you. Yeah, you're here because you care about, these are assumptions I'm making, that you're here because you care about mental health. You're here because you care about not just mental health in general as an idea or something that you practice personally, but also mental health and well-being in the organizations in which you're part of, including your businesses. And the way, caring about how, as a leader in those organizations, how you can promote and support mental health in others. Doing so is an act of care for the people that you employ or that you work side by side with. Caring about mental health and well-being is a great way to show that the people that you work with aren't just there to kind of contribute to a bottom line in some way, but they're there because they're people in a shared mission towards a goal that are important to you, not just by what they can produce or output they make, but for the person they are. And that goes a long way in helping their well-being as well, and creating a culture that supports health in all the ways. Objectives for today, what I hope we can take away by the time this discussion's over. 5 things. So first, what is mental health? I want to gain a concept, a comprehensive understanding of the concept of mental health. What is it? It's this term that we maybe gets talked about a lot, but how can we best understand it? Number 2, I want to clarify your own personal values related to mental health. Like I said, big part of this, it starts with you, the leader, the owner. And so clarifying your own personal values when it comes to well-being and mental health. Number 3, want to identify and assess your individual behaviors that impact mental health and well-being for yourself. Number 4, evaluate how your leadership approach and organizational culture that you create either aids or hinders mental health of individuals within your organization. We'll have some kind of thought exercises and ways that we can try to assess this, hopefully get a clear idea of this. And the last objective that hopefully we cover today is to enhance awareness of certain strategies, resources, tools that are available to us as leaders in business that can help foster mentally healthy organization in our business, and also our practices that we can do as leaders that can support the well-being of our businesses. All right, mental health defined. What does this mean? Mental health refers to a person's emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So part of it's how you feel, it's your feelings. It's also how you think, how focused you can be, how well you can pay attention to things, hit detail, stay organized. And it's also relational. It's a social element to mental health too. How well are we able to navigate relationships, to be connected to people, to have empathy and support, to respond to feedback well without getting defensive. All those things are part of mental health. It's not just the emotional side. That part gets the most discussion, I think, kind of maybe the first thing that comes to mind, things like depression, anxiety. Are you worried? Are you sad? Are you how are you feeling? That's the first thing we think about. But mental health refers to other stuff as well, including relationships in people's lives, whether it be at home or at work. Mental health involves individual's ability to handle stress. And I highlighted that word stress because that's going to be a key point for what we talk about today. A lot of our mental health hinges on our relationship to stress. Mental health isn't just relationship to stress, but relationship to others. It's how we make choices. It's how we maintain a balance in different aspects of our life. Being mentally healthy contributes to overall well-being. It helps people cope with life's challenges, work productively. That's a key one there for us in business, right? Mental health initiatives, caring about well-being has an important kind of feedback into our business. The healthier our people are, the more productive they can be too. So it's, when we care about this and we lean into this world of well-being, it's not just all, time, energy, money spent on this kind of soft, fluffy mental health stuff. Really, you can argue that it feeds back into more healthy and productive people on the job. And so that's a key part that we need to be thoughtful of about the why we need to care about this. Mental health also contributes or helps people make positive contributions to their communities at large, at home, in their neighborhoods, but also the community of coworkers that they show up to work with every day. An important one here, as a therapist myself, I work in the field of mental health and diagnose and treat mental disorders. And I've seen many people with diagnoses live incredibly healthy lives. So the absence of mental health isn't just the absence of mental disorders, things like depression, anxiety, trauma, ADHD, but mental health is more than that. It encompasses the presence of positive attributes and coping mechanisms that help people, even with diagnoses or disorders, do these things that we talk about here, to be able to cope with stress, to relate well to others, to have positive relationships, to make positive contributions to their community. I just see a question pop up here. Click on. Oh, yes, it will be recorded. Thanks, Jenny, for the question. It'll be recorded and available afterwards as well with the slides. All right, so the key points from that, a lot of words there in the last slide, but the big things to maintain or to keep in mind there. Mental health is a pretty encompassing definition that includes emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Some people even put in other elements like spiritual well-being or physical well-being. For example, spiritual aspect. For many people, spiritual life can be a resource to help them cope with stresses. And so how healthy a person's spiritual life might be can also contribute to their overall well-being and mental health. The physical aspect too, are there physical ailments, chronic illness, things that affect the emotional well-being, can be very hard, can be terribly hard to live with a certain diagnosis or chronic pain, getting out of bed, doing daily activities, disability, like they're the physical parts of us relate to the emotional and psychological and social parts of us too. And so even in like the other side of that too, like if depression, for example, it can be hard to want to go exercise or to go for a walk or go outside to do physical things when you're feeling kind of down. And so there's this interplay of the physical health as well in the mix of all this. The definition talks about certain signs of well-being, ability to handle stress, ability to relate well to others, to be decisive, to make choices, to maintain a balance in different aspects of life, a healthy balance, to work productively, and to make positive contributions to their community. I highlighted these things, brought them out from that definition, because these can be simple things. These six things here can be things that we can use as a compass or a barometer, more like a barometer to our own selves of like, how am I doing? Well, how am I handling stress lately? Checking in with ourselves, like, okay, this past week, how did I do? Did it get to me? Did it overwhelm me? Or did I manage all the plates that I had spinning this week? How are my relationships? Am I fighting with my kids? Am I fighting with my partner? Am I criticizing people at work or being defensive when people bring feedback to me? How am I doing in my relationships? Decision making and decisiveness. Am I bogged down, avoiding certain things? How balanced am I? Am I getting emotional, psychological, social, spiritual, physical opportunities or things, engagement, each of these areas of life? How balanced am I in those aspects of life? How productive have I been, and what are my contributions to my community? Am I making any, right? Or is it too much just to get through the day? So these things, all from the definition of mental health, are all good things to kind of check off routinely and check in with routinely to see how are we doing. Could even give ourselves kind of a rating on this, a scale of 1 to 10. How am I handling stress? How am I relating to others? And this would be a good kind of weekly practice as leaders to see how are we doing in our own terms of mental health and well-being. And like we said too, that it's not just the absence of mental disorders, but it's the presence to cope with, to manage disorders, and to still be able to handle stress, relate well to others, make choices, et cetera, et cetera. Because a lot of us, probably all of us, have been through stuff or have diagnoses. It's quite common. Anxiety, I think, over the lifetime, about 50% of Americans will have an anxiety disorder, and depression is about some studies say 30%, some a little higher than that people will have a diagnosis of depression. So chances are people here watching this today are living with or have lived through mental disorders and have worked really hard to be able to manage those and handle those and recover those. And if it's not us, it's the people next to us that may be going through stuff or have a story. And just because there's a story there doesn't mean that they lack well-being. They can still contribute to all these things that mental health encompasses, especially when there's efforts made to manage those disorders well. Oops. All right, a thought exercise. This is something that can do at home and is best done probably with like 15 minutes of journaling. I know, cliche, I'm a therapist, I'm asking y'all to journal, but this can be really helpful to clarify your own values about mental health. As business leaders, we often start with our mission, vision, values of our organizations, and these things are cornerstones and drive us in the ways we make decisions, drive us in how we identify our strategic planning and things we want to make happen in the next fiscal year. When we apply those things to our personal lives, that can be really helpful too. Mission, vision, values. When we think about like, what's that? What are those, the mission statement for myself? Who do I want to be? What are those values that make me who I am in the most ideal version of me? Want to hone that in on questions about how do you value mental health? What about it do you value? Here we are talking about it. You're here listening to this, watching this webinar, so you probably have some value of it. How high of a priority is it if you value it in your own personal life? How do you live out these values about mental health in your personal life? Now, ideally, we take a few minutes to kind of write these out, or I'd ask you in person with my clients. I have a number of clients who I've worked with who've been leaders in education or healthcare, business. And these are some of the practices we do to help people get clear on what this means for them. Easier done in a counseling setting versus a webinar, but that's why, yeah, I encourage you all to take this home and spend some time with this. Really ask yourself about these things. How consistent are you in living out your values about mental health in your personal life? If consistency is hard, what makes that hard? What gets in the way of being more consistent? Who or what in your life supports your mental health? What are the main challenges to your mental health? Maybe it's current stressors, maybe it's past traumas or things you've been through before. And how the people who know you know that you value mental health? Are there things they see you do or can observe you doing that would show them that this is an important aspect of your life and a key value that you have? Similarly, extending from ourselves, getting clear about the values of mental health and well-being, not just for us personally, but for the organizations that we lead. Do we really care about it, or are we checking a box? Oh, yeah, I have the well-being initiative, or I have this training on whatever, or we did that yoga thing last year, so yeah, I care about that. Are we checking boxes, or is this something that really matters to us? What does it even mean to have a mentally healthy workplace? What does that look like? How do you contribute personally to a mentally healthy workplace? Are there things you do in your leadership or in your day-to-day that help people with this, or that maybe even hinder it? Being honest with ourselves. So how do I contribute to creating well-being and health in my business? Would your employees know, and how would they know if you value mental health and well-being? What do they see as far as policies, procedures, things you might model to them, conversations you have with them? Are you checking in? Is there curiosity? Can we ask those things? Do we ask those things? Regarding leadership, what role should leadership play in fostering a mentally healthy workplace? How do you balance productivity expectations with the need for employee well-being? Number one, I could add, I don't have it here, but could also ask a question like, what kind of investment am I willing to put in to supporting mental health and well-being? And that investment could be time, could be financial investment. But if this is important to me, how important is it to me regarding what I'm willing to put forward to it? How would your employees talk about the workplace environment? How would they describe it in terms of the healthy culture that exists or maybe doesn't exist at times there? And how supported do your employees feel regarding their well-being? Later, take some time to think about these things. Write them down. Get as clear as you can about these questions and your values about mental health and well-being. This will be the starting point to making changes in your life if changes need to be made, but also will help you to extend those changes in that clarity and that focus towards your organization and your employees about ways that you can better show, or better, not even show, it's aligning your actions with your values, right? Like that's where the rubber meets the road. If I say I value it, but I'm not doing anything about it, either my value needs to change or my actions need to change. So after doing this exercise, if you recognize that, yes, mental health, well-being, it's something I value. Yes, I want that. Then how might my actions align more with that value so that people around me have no question about what I value, what I care about, and that this is an important thing for me. But there's alignment that they see and that you feel in what you're doing and how you're leading in your organization. So this is an incredibly valuable place to start, getting clear on your own values about well-being and mental health. My main point today, I had an old supervisor said that if you're giving a speech or a talk or a lecture, doesn't matter how many points you have, as long as you have one. That's what stuck with me. So I hope there's at least one point, and the point that I want to make that I hope you take with you today is this: is that well-being or mental health, both for individuals, ourselves, and organizations that we're part of, it comes down to the balance of both the real and perceived presence of the two following powerful forces. Number one, the real or perceived presence of the feelings of stress, and the real and perceived presence of the feelings of security. Those are two things. We're going to hit those more in depth as we move along, but those will be the primary things I want us to remember. Mental health, maybe I could argue, is boiled down to our relationship to those two things. How stressed do we feel at any given time, and how secure do we feel at any given time? Because those feelings have real implications for what we do, and real implications for even our physiological responses that contribute to our health or even disease too. And that healthy people create healthy organizations, and healthy organizations create healthy people. There's this feedback loop here that you can see the graphic. It all goes together. And so we can only control ourselves in this, or maybe we mostly can control ourselves. We can contribute or support, but we can't control the well-being of people around us. We can't. We're limited in that. It's their job to ultimately to control their well-being and to make decisions about that. We can start with ourselves, and then the hope is that when we are healthy people, a healthy person contributing to an organization, we're doing so in a healthier way that then provides support for people to hopefully also make choices to become healthy people, which then creates healthy organizations, healthy people, and that feedback loop goes on and on. So stress and security and how we manage those things, our relationship to those things, are the most important part about mental health. I thought about giving there's things you can Google mental health in the workplace and find different things, different resources. I didn't want to just repeat all the stuff that's already out there, or scroll Instagram and you'll find posts that have information. I wanted to give a different story, one that fits this setting in the webinar, and that one maybe provides some additional insight into understanding and helping even like organize and structure our thoughts about how do I think about leading? How do I think about well-being in my own life, in my practice, in my business? Stress, security, stress and security. Remember those things, and hopefully we'll make this make sense as we go. All right, start with you. Stress. So what is stress? So stress is a physiological response. When you're feeling stressed, things in your brain and body are actually happening, and it can be measured. So we are created with a stress response. We have developed a stress response. It's been with us from the beginnings of being humans in this world. It had this really valuable survival, evolutionary survival implication that when you are out in the woods trying to live as I don't know, cave person back in the day, and you hear leaves rustling off to the side and you don't know what it is, that initial like jump into action, that shock, that like, whoa, what's that noise? Is that a lion? Is that a bear? Do I need to be worried? Do I need to run? Do I need to fight? That is your stress response that happens quicker than you can even consciously think, because it needs to happen fast. Because if that is a lion or a bear behind the rustling leaves, you got to move, not later, but now. And so our stress response is designed to be efficient, to be fast, to be quick, and has one goal in mind: self-preservation against threat. very effective back in the day in helping humanity survive. We're still here, so our stress response, we can thank for that. It's helped us get to where we are today. But our brain doesn't know when to shut that stress response off. And I talked about there's a physiological thing happening. Don't want to bore you with this, but the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis is the stress response. It's the hormonal or chemical things that get pushed out in our bodies, adrenaline and cortisol, that when we're feeling stressed, those levels elevate and they do things in our bodies that help us self-preserve in that given moment. It's supposed to be short-term. It's supposed to be acute. And when it is short-term, it can be really effective. We get in trouble two ways. One is when that stress is not short-term, when there's no off switch to it, when cortisol and adrenaline is pumping, pumping, pumping every day. We wake up every day, there's more cortisol. Every day there's this feeling of stress or threat. That is really detrimental to our bodies. That's where we have oftentimes stress has been shown to have implications on our immune system, on our reproductive systems, on our ability to focus and think, to our ability to sleep and do like kind of normal physiological activities. Chronic stress throws all that off because of the presence of cortisol and adrenaline having no off switch to that. So it does some real stuff to our bodies. And this isn't just the threat of, or excuse me, to all threats, but it's also to perceived threats. And this is where, in addition to stress not turning off, but when stress gets to be pretty hypervigilant, where it's not just lions we're worried about, but it's my mail that's coming later today that might have a bill in it for medical expenses, or maybe it's the stress about my child who is struggling at school, or maybe it's the stress on your commute to and from work. Anybody get a little kind of tense or reactive with some colorful language or hand gestures at people who are, of course, not driving as good as you, right? Or like we're doing it right, they're doing it wrong. That is that stress response, right? A perceived threat. Some of these things that we think matter so much, they might matter, but maybe aren't as immediately threatening as the lion in the bushes. And yet our brains don't distinguish that. And so in modern life, our stress response is helpful, but it does some more harm than good at times. And so being clear about our perception of the things that are threats to us can have a big impact on our ability to find that off switch, to calm the adrenaline, calm the cortisol, to help us regulate a bit. Some stress is good. The goal in this isn't to live a stress-free life. That's impossible. Some stress is good. Perhaps you're feeling stressed enough to get out of bed today. Set your alarm last night. Maybe feeling stressed enough to, I don't know, present a webinar and to prepare for it. Stress kind of gets you going. It gets you moving to things, and that is good. It does have an energy to it that actually is really healthy. Some stress is okay. Some stress is healthy for us, but too much and too long or inappropriately perceived or applied is detrimental to our health. When stress hits, we have 4 primary stress responses: fight, flight, freeze, and caretake. You see these in nature all the time. So the fight response, if you've ever been out hiking and you see a cute little bear cub by its mother bear, you probably don't want to go up and like try to pet the little bear cub, because that mother bear is going to be like, no, stress, threat, fight. It's going to probably not be too nice to you, get you away from its little cub. So bears, you can think of like, yeah, that happens in nature, happens in us too. Sometimes we fight, get physical. Sometimes fight responses come out in other ways, like being critical, confrontational, even defensiveness is a fight response to threat. Number 2, flight. Michigan, a lot of deer hunters. I don't know if anybody's on the call or watching this video, but if a white-tailed deer are kind of famous when they hear a noise, a threat, they turn and run. They're not like the bear. They don't come after you and like hoof you to death. Like they don't want to do that. They're fast. They go. They hear a threat and they run. Humans do this too in different ways. Well, sometimes we run from stuff. Sometimes we avoid or procrastinate. Anyone ever do those things? Those are flight responses to perceived threat. Freeze, again, Michigan example, maybe other states too, but possums. You may often see a possum in a road, sometimes dead, sometimes playing dead. Possums are famous for that defense mechanism of freezing, playing dead to get a predator to go away. This is their freeze response to stress. Again, humans, we do this. Sometimes like we shut down, like inability to kind of even process things, to know words to say in a conversation. That is a freeze response. And the last one, caretake, that sounds really good. You see it in nature, one last nature example, but ducks, imagine a duck in water, little baby ducks drown, all swimming, and then there's a predator up above, a hawk or something that wants to eat the ducks. The mother duck doesn't fly up and attack the hawk, usually doesn't just run away, but you might see it pull up its wing and the little baby ducks swim under. And she shields them from the threat above, sacrificing herself or protecting the babies apart from herself. We do this too. Sometimes a caretaking response, usually this applies to an unboundaried caretaking response where someone will maybe respond to a threat by doing too much, like taking on more tasks than what they can actually or realistically do, or over functioning for other people. The problem's there, I'll just do it. Fine, I'll do it. Don't worry about it. I got it. That can be a caretake response. So we all do these things, and the main goal is to get away from threat and to self-preserve. It's about us being okay, individual self-preservation. It's not about relationship preservation or organizational preservation. It doesn't account for the other person. It's about us. And maybe you can feel already the potential pitfalls of when our reactions become centered solely on ourselves versus the well-being of a team, a group, an organization. Robert Sapolsky is a Stanford neurobiologist, and he had this fun study of baboons, this baboon troop in Africa, where he would like kind of walk behind them and hit them with a dart. And they'd fall asleep, and he'd go up and he'd pull blood from them and test their cortisol levels. So we just talked about cortisol as a stress response. He wanted to know, could we learn anything about stress by following this baboon troop? So he didn't just dart them and take blood. He'd also watch them for long periods of time and observe their behaviors and kind of identify the different group dynamics of a baboon troop. And from that, he could tell which baboons were like the alpha ones, who was in charge, which ones more kind of the normal background baboons, and the hierarchy of everyone in between. And what he found in his studies, there's a really interesting book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, if you want more reading about this, and a documentary you can find easily on YouTube called Stress, Portrait of a Killer, where you can get a lot of this information here. But he talks about in that bit, his study, that the baboons that had the highest stress response were the ones that were on the lowest end of the hierarchy. So less stress, being in control, being in charge, more stress, lack of control, not being in charge, no power, no predictability in what's to come. The lack of predictability and control was a huge part of his findings in this. That can be applied beyond just baboon troops, but into human life too. Stress seems to be directly related to a lack of control in our kind of lack of autonomy in our daily lives, lack of kind of say over what we do or how our what our work is, what our schedules are, what we eat for dinner at night, like all those different ways that maybe having some agency in our life would be helpful. When that's taken from us or we have limited amounts of that, our cortisol levels tend to spike. And then lack of predictability being the key part of that too. The baboons on the bottom of the hierarchy, they wouldn't know when the big one's going to come and bop them on the head or steal their food or push them just for fun. Can happen at any time. Similarly, in life, when there's lack of predictability about our day to day, or what we show up to work, we don't know what's going to happen, what the problem's going to be that day, or if so and so is going to be a bad mood. When we have lack of predictability, that also spikes cortisol levels. And so applying that, what we can learn from Dr. Sapolsky's work, where in your lives do you experience a lack of control and or a lack of predictability? Maybe for some of you, it's with parenting. Maybe some of you, it is the job. Maybe the type of work or business you run, your position in it makes these things difficult to have any control, any predictability in the work. Maybe it's with finances or intimate relationships. Can happen in a lot of ways. Maybe it's even with physical health, feeling out of control, lack of predictability with our physical health. But getting clear on where these sources of stress are in your life can be a great way to begin to get out of that reactive self-preservation mode and to change that a bit from reaction to intention as a way to cope with that. Where in your business, where in your organizations do you experience a lack of control and or lack of predictability? And how do you cope with that? Where might your employees experience lack of predictability and lack of control in the workplace? How do you see them coping with it? Right? Like there's different ways that you might see this happen around you personally, but also in your organizations. Control, predictability, and like we said before with stress, it's either real or perceived. Maybe it's a perception of lack of control or a perception of lack of predictability, but being aware of how that impacts you and maybe even others around you. It's not your job to fix that, especially if it's a perception and not a reality. It's their job, but it can give you some insight into, okay, maybe why is someone struggling today? Or when I talk to them or give feedback, why do they react the way they do? It can help us kind of have some emotional intelligence about the other person's experience that can make us more effective as leaders or managers in relating to people that we work with and showing our support for them as well. In the story of well-being, stress is the adversary. You can get the sense of that already by the things we're talking about. How much does your own stress impact your ability to lead? What are your biggest stressors? I just talked about that. Like what is, lack of control, lack of predictability, what's real and what's perceived in our own lives that makes us feel the stress that impacts our relationship, our ability to make decisions, ability to relate well to others. What are the pitfalls of leading from self-preservation mindset? There's many, right? Endless pitfalls if that's how we show up to work every day. And I'm sure many of us are not that way, but that is even in like those rough days, right? The days that are worse than those exceptions. If there's ways we can pump the brakes when our brain starts to fill us with cortisol and that stress response kicks in, how do we even recognize it, right? Like, what do we see? How can we know when those things are happening? These are just some things that might come to mind. It can grow your awareness too. Am I being more critical of others lately? Am I being more defensive, responding to feedback? What am I avoiding? How much am I avoiding? Gossiping, complaining about others, showing up. Am I even getting here? Procrastination, boundary crossing, taking on too many jobs rather than delegating, right? These are all fight, flight, freeze, and caretake examples in real life that we might be doing. So we can look at this in ourselves, in our own leadership, like when am I at risk from self-preservation versus organizational preservation and caring for others? When might my employees or coworkers be showing signs of their stress and overwhelm and lack of well-being in their lives? If I notice these things in them, that might be that kind of clue of like, okay, wow, yeah, John, he kind of needs some, is he okay? Because he's been complaining about everybody lately. Maybe I should check in just to see how he's doing. So this can be good ways to kind of keep your radar open for your well-being as well as like signs of others too, right? Of like, okay, am I seeing this? How much of that is there a change in this too? Like, yeah, John never gossiped before. Now he's doing it all the time. Like what's different? So it can be ways to give some insight into others' experiences. What can we do to get out of this, right? This is where maybe why you're all here. What can we do? So the problem, if the problem stress, how do we get out of that? Couple things. We're doing it already. You're already on your way through the exercise of identifying values, getting clarity on your values, aligning action with those. So making choices out of life with intent, not just reacting to things. The word integrity, I love that term. Integrity doesn't just mean follow the rules, but integrity it's a math term. It comes from the word integer, a whole number. So living with integrity is living in wholeness. It's when your values and your actions align to have some resonance. Like those, when they go together, when there's synergy there, an alignment there, that is what it means to have integrity. How are we doing with our integrity when it comes to our values on well-being and mental health? Perspective. Gratitude is a huge thing. It can be easy to forget that, many of us, if we've created the businesses we started, if we did, startups or we're running the business, that this is a pretty cool thing. Not everybody gets to do this. And it can be easy to let stress distract us from this opportunity, this gift that we get to do in our roles in business. And so that perspective of choosing gratitude can be really difficult some days, but it's super important to hold on to that. What are we thankful for? What do we get to do? Like that's a thing too, like changing the have tos to a get to. Oh, I have to write that report today. Oh, I have to go have that meeting today. No, I get to write that report. I get to have that meeting and network with that person today. That subtle change of language can help us orient ourselves to more gratitude, and it can change that maybe perception of a stressful thing into something totally different. It can get rid of that misperception and even lower the cortisol. It can change our physiology by having practices of gratitude. And then this was when I learned from my son in kindergarten. Is it a big problem or a little problem? Some stresses are real, but how big, right? Is there perspective of a stress the right amount? And even just kind of being clear, is this a big problem or a little problem can help us. Self-care, it's cliche, but so true. Exercise, personal therapy, highly recommend. Healthy eating, what hobbies do you have? Mindfulness practices, getting out in sunlight as I stare at the snow out the window. How are your relationships? Being with people who care about you, who you feel cared by from. So paying attention to self-care is huge. Knowing your limits and boundaries. There's a great saying about boundaries. I love that the saying says that the only people who get upset with you when you start practicing boundaries are the people who benefited when you had none, right? Like I see that so true in my practice with my clients, personal life too. Like know your limits. We can't do it all. We shouldn't do it all. And if you get pushback on it, those people are probably only upset because they benefited from you when you didn't have those boundaries before. So practicing boundaries, we all have them, they're good. And support system, mentors, peer support, networks, SBAM opportunities, right? There's like leaning into the people and systems around you for support when stress is getting kind of haywire, or just preventatively to have these things in place so that we can be okay. If stress is the adversary, feelings of security is the hero. How confidently can your employees say the following: I matter here, or I feel secure and cared about in my job, or I trust my company and the leadership. All those things are signs that point to a feeling of security. The remedy to stress isn't no stress. We said that. That's impossible. The remedy to stress is feelings of security. When people feel secure, that off switch, that reactive, that instinctual need to self-preserve goes away. There's no need. There's no lion chasing me. Right? What do I need to be fight, flight, freeze, or caretaking for? I can just be healthy. I can be good. I don't need to worry about stuff. I can be secure. So security is the remedy. When employees feel like they matter and that their work matters to their employee and to their employer, if they have trust for leadership, that they consider their interests and well-being, not solving it for them, but if they can trust that my employer or my organization is considering me, that is good enough, right? Showing them that there's processes in place, systems in place, when there's conversations or kind of a regular culture of check-ins, when there's well-being being modeled to them, that gives that trust that, okay, if I have an issue, if I have a problem, I know that will be okay and that it can be managed because my organization has shown me these things that I trust that my depression won't ruin my job, won't be a threat to me in my workplace. So things like that. So feelings of security go up, feelings of stress go down, create healthier work environment. Three things, and we're almost done here. Improving well-being through calm, connected, and clear leadership. So these three things. Remember that alliterative phrase, calm, connected, and clear. Type of leaders we can be. So being calm in the workplace. Do you show empathy and understanding to your employees? How flexible are your work arrangements? Can people work from home if there's a snowstorm, a polar Arctic bomb? What they call this weekend? Do you promote work-life balance? Or is it gas pedal down all the time, go, 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 80 hours a week, all the time? Are there appropriate breaks and downtime? Comfortable work environment, adequate training and professional development opportunities? Are there clear processes in place for conflict resolution? How collaborative is decision-making when appropriate? All these help to provide space within the organization for that off switch to cortisol. All these are just little subtle ways. Many of these don't even cost money. It can be free to show empathy and understanding to your employees. There's no big initiative or investment in some of that stuff. It's a posture. It's a way of being with people. It's a way of, it's a culture that can accomplish this. So finding space within the stress for that off switch. And these isn't exhaustive of a list. There's other things too, but these are some things that came to mind as I thought about this. Calm, number one. Connected, number two. Connection helps people feel secure. How do we create connection on the job? Shared goals and mission, number one. How aligned are people? How do they know the mission of the company, and how aligned are they working towards that with you? Recognition and appreciation and celebration can be big things, so that people know that their work isn't just in vain or just for the benefit of the owner at the top, but that they are recognized, that they matter. Celebrate the little things with people. Birthdays, have parties, work milestones, things like that. 10-year anniversaries, celebrate those things. Clear communication, regular communication. An old business coach of mine, he said that good leadership is being redundant. Say the main thing, say the main thing, say the main thing, and then say the main thing again. Regular, clear, making sure people know the important things. Providing mentorship and coaching. Open door policy, for employees to discuss concerns, that they can feel safe to do so without retribution. Regular rounding on employee, like a doctor rounds in a hospital, check on the patients. Can be good leadership to check on people too at times. Hey, how's it going? Jim, saw on Facebook that you had a birthday the other day for your kid. Yeah, how was that? What'd you do? How old are they? Hey, how's your wife Mary doing? Right? Like just those personal touches. You don't have to go too deep even, but just like remembering people's names in their life. Remember their kids' names, checking on them, asking about them. Social events and gatherings can be big. Sometimes those are investments too, like it costs some money to have a summer party or a holiday party, but can be really good opportunities to create a sense of connection. And then of course, culture of inclusivity where everyone feels valued and respected, no matter who they are, what their background is. It's a great way for people to feel connected and part of something that matters. And then finally, the last one is clear leadership. To be clear, talk about communication already, say the main thing, but clear communication specifically about what resources and tools are available to them that may support well-being. Maybe there's trainings that are available. Maybe it's a monthly book club. Maybe there's a group that goes and does yoga on Monday nights. Maybe there's a group that does a happy hour on a Friday, but like communicating about those things that are available to people that can help them find connection or find that off switch amidst the work-life balance, making sure that people know about what's available. Clear policies that support mental health and well-being, things like EAPs or employment assistance programs, been more popular lately and can be potential good resources. Um, Training education about well-being, training leaders about well-being and mental health. Come into things like this. Advocacy, modeling. I have a client who's owns a veterinarian practice and not the type to talk about personal things, very much like old school, I guess, and had some stuff go on and said, Dan, I did a thing the other day. I sent an email to all my employees and I said to them that I'm going to therapy. I've never told anyone before. And with what was going on, I felt it was like important to tell them that. And since I've done that, I've had 5 people come up and ask me about that. People thank me about that. Said, thank you for saying that. I was on the fence about going myself, but to hear you talk about that makes me feel like it's a good thing. So how we model and talk about and lead even about the importance of mental health in our lives can sometimes be great invitations to people do the same for them. Wellness initiatives, open dialogue, things like that, that can also be great ways to give clear ideas about how to, or clear expectations, excuse me, to be clear about your commitment and value of well-being in the workplace. In conclusion, leading for well-being is all about how you do the following 2 things. Number 1, navigate your own stress in your life. Taking care of you is essential. There's that kind of cliche airplane example where like those things, the masks come down, they tell parents put one on you first before you get one on your kid. That's actually the best way to help your kid, right? Not them first, but like make sure you're okay because you can't help them unless you're okay. Same thing when it comes to well-being in the workplace. If you're not focusing on your own, we can't help our coworkers and our employees if we're not doing it ourselves first. And then number 2, create a sense of security for everyone in the organization. Establishing a norm, cultural norms of calm, connected, and clear workplace culture. There's no one-size-fits-all approach, so everyone will have to assess their own organization's unique needs and strengths and opportunities to see what works for you. But hopefully this is an invitation to start that thought process and to think about how you might be able to do these things a bit more and a bit better in your own workplace. I know we're taking questions or have had that opportunity as we've gone. I only saw that one, but if there's any other questions, I'd love to hear any of those.
Dan, I don't see any other questions at present.
Okay.
Just wanted to say that was really good information. I a lot of insight for myself as well. What's your advice? How do I get started? If I'm a business owner and I need to get started, obviously I'm starting with myself. Any next steps?
Right. That's the best place. Yeah,
Start
it's
with
hard to say generally. Because every company is so unique. Like some
yeah.
have large HR departments, right? And like maybe that's a good place too. Like, okay, HR, what are our policies about this? What type of things do our benefit plans offer to people? What are options that we could add to those benefit plans to make those more supportive to people?
Yep,
Maybe
excellent.
maybe place to start too. Sorry, Laura, just like the rounding one, like just like how relational are we, right? Like, okay, if I start with myself, yes, check. Number 2, what's the next easy one? Find one person today, ask them how they're doing. Just check in. Like, hey Larry, how are you today? How's your day going? And like have a real conversation and like start making that a normal part of this. Because from there, then all these other things can find place at some point too. But yeah, start with one person today and just kind of check in, see how they're doing.
Excellent. And Sarah, I know you're here. Do you have anything else you'd like to ask or add to this conversation before we go?
No, just that this was really valuable. I appreciate your time. It looks like we might have a Q&A. Oh, just a thank you. That was awesome. Somebody said they went from being a global security leader and now they're working on a wellness practice, focusing on unwinding tapped emotions. So that's
Very cool.
quite a change. So
Yeah,
clearly, that's resonating here.
Yeah.
love it. That's what I love about business owners, right? Entrepreneurial.
Mhm.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Yes.
And again, for all of our participants, this is recorded. It was recorded, and you will receive a copy of the recording link along with the slides. So there's nothing else. Thank you again, Dan. Thank you to Alliance Counseling Group. Very interested in learning more about your business, and I will go out to your site and check you out as well. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks for
being here
hosting.
today.
It's been a pleasure.
All right.
Glad to have you. Thank you.